The White Man's Burden is a poem by the English poet Rudyard Kipling. It was originally published in the popular magazine McClure's in 1899, with the subtitle The United States in the Philippine Islands. The poem was originally written for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, but exchanged for Recessional. Kipling changed the text of Burden to reflect the subject of American colonization of the Philippines, recently won from Spain in the Spanish-Euro-American War. The poem consists of 7 stanzas, following a regular rhyme scheme. At face value it appears to be a rhetorical command to white men to colonize and rule other nations for the benefit of those people. Although Kipling's poem mixed exhortation of empire with somber warnings of the costs involved, imperialists within the United States of America understood the phrase white man's burden as justifying imperialism as a noble enterprise. Because of its theme and title, it has become emblematic both of Eurocentric racism and of Western aspirations to improve and industrialize the developing world. A century after its publication, the poem still rouses strong emotions, and can be analyzed from a variety of perspectives. Poem, original title, The White Man's Burden, The United States in the Philippine Islands. History. The poem first appeared in the United States on February 5, 1899, in McClure's newspapers such as the New York Sun, during the Battle of Manila. On the following day, the United States Congress ratified the Treaty of Paris, which asserted its jurisdiction over the Philippines. On February 7, Senator Benjamin Tillman read 3 stanzas from The White Man's Burden on the floor of the United States Senate to argue that the U.S. should rescind its claim to the Philippines. Why, Tillman asked, are we bent on forcing upon them a civilization not suited to them and which only means in their view degradation and a loss of self-respect, which is worse than the loss of life itself? The poem was widely distributed in the United States and began the Kipling boom, a wave of Kipling publicity in the newspapers. Differing interpretations. One view proposes that whites have an obligation to rule over, and encourage the cultural development of people from other cultural backgrounds until they can take their place in the world economically and socially. The term the white man's burden has been interpreted by some as racist, or possibly taken as a metaphor for a condescending view of undeveloped national culture and economic traditions, identified as a sense of European ascendancy which has been called cultural imperialism. An alternative interpretation is the philanthropic view. The implication, of course, was that the empire existed not for the benefit economic or strategic or otherwise of Britain itself, but in order that primitive peoples, incapable of self-government, could, with British guidance, eventually become civilized. The truth of this doctrine was accepted naively by some, and hypocritically by others, but it served in any case to legitimize Britain's acquisition of portions of Central Africa and her domination, in concert with other European powers, of China. On the face of it, the poem conveys a positive view of the idea that the white man, generally accepted to mean the colonial powers, had a duty to civilize the more brutish and barbaric parts of the world. It begins by describing the colonized Filipinos as new court, sullen peoples, half devil and half child. Although belief in the virtues of empire was widespread at the time, there were also many dissenters. The publication of the poem caused a flurry of arguments from both sides, most notably from Mark Twain and Henry James. While Kipling may have intended the piece as a form of satire, much of Kipling's other writing does suggest that he genuinely believed in the beneficent role, which the introduction of Western ideas could play in lifting non-Western peoples out of poverty and ignorance. Lines 3-5, and other parts of the poem suggest that it is not just the native people who are held in captivity, but also the functionaries of empire, who are caught in colonial service and may die while helping other races less fortunate than themselves. An analysis focused on the social status and background of colonial officers active at the time is lacking. As is one of the Christian missionary movement, also quite active at the time in parts of the world under colonial rule, which also emphasized the theme of aiding those less fortunate. Several authors note that Kipling offered the poem to Theodore Roosevelt to help persuade many doubting Americans to seize the Philippines. His work with regards to British colonialism in India had become widely popular in the United States. the poem could be viewed as a way for Kipling to share the virtues of British colonialism with Americans. In September 1898 Kipling wrote to Roosevelt, stating, "Now go in and put all the weight of your influence into hanging on permanently to the whole Philippines. America has gone and stuck a pickaxe into the foundations of a rotten house, and she is morally bound to build the house over again from the foundations or have it fall about her ears." He forwarded the poem to Roosevelt in November of the same year, just after Roosevelt was elected governor of New York. The Norton Anthology of English Literature argues the poem is in line with Kipling's strong imperialism and a belief of a divine burden to reign God's empire on earth. According to journalist Steve Saylor, however, the far-right writer John Derbyshire has described Kipling as an imperialist utterly without any illusions about what being an imperialist actually means. Which, in some ways, means that he was not really an imperialist at all. Literary response: several parodies and other of critical works have used themes or quotes collected from Kipling's poem. Early examples include Henry Leboucherie's poem The Brown Man's Burden, and H. T. Johnson's April 1899 popular response, entitled The Black Man's Burden. A Black Man's Burden Association was organized with the goal of demonstrating that mistreatment of brown people in the Philippines was an extension of the mistreatment of black Americans at home. Ernest Crosby wrote a poem, The Real White Man's Burden. E. D. Morrell, a British journalist in the Congo Free State, drew attention to the brutality of imperialism in 1903. His article, The Black Man's Burden, was published in 1903. In another article, also entitled The Black Man's Burden, he describes his view of both the white and black man's burdens. West Indian American writer Hubert Harrison's response entitled The Black Man's Burden from When Africa Awakes was published in New York in 1920. See also, The Gods of the Copybook Headings, Industrial Revolution, 1899 in Literature, 1899 in Poetry, Colonialism, List of the works of Rudyard Kipling, Orientalism, White Savior Narrative in Film. Notes. References, A Companion to Victorian Poetry, Alison Chapman. Blackwell, Oxford, 2002. Chisholm, Michael. Modern World Development, A Geographical Perspective. Rowman and Littlefield, 1982, ISBN 0-389-20320-3. Cody, David. The Growth of the British Empire. The Victorian Web, University Scholars Programme, National University of Singapore, November 2000. Crosby, Ernest. The Real White Man's Burden. Funk and Wacknall's Company, €32 Dixon, Thomas. The Leopard Spots a Romance of the White Man's Burden 1865 €1900. Encyclopedia of India. Ed. Stanley Wolpert. Volume 3. Detroit, Charles Scribner's Sons, 2006, pages 35 €36. 4 vols. Eurocentrism. In Encyclopedia of the Developing World. Ed. Thomas M. Leonard, Taylor and Francis, 2006, ISBN 0-415-97662-6. Greenblatt, Stephen. Norton Anthology of English Literature, New York, 2006, ISBN 0-393-92532-3, Kipling. Fordham University. Full text of the poem. Leboucherie, Henry. The Brown Man's Burden. Mama, Amina. Beyond the Masks, Race, Gender, and Subjectivity. Routledge, 1995, ISBN 0-415-03544-9. Miller, Stuart Creighton. Benevolent Assimilation, The American Conquest of the Philippines, 1899 1903. Yale University Press. ISBN 0-300-03081-9. Murphy, Gretchen. Shadowing the White Man, Unregistered Trademark S. Burden, U.S. Imperialism and the Problem of the Color Line. NYU Press. ISBN 978 0. 8147-9619-1, Pimentel, Benjamin. The Philippines. Liberator was really a colonizer. Bush's Revisionist History. The San Francisco Chronicle, D3. Saylor, Steve. What Will Happen in Afghanistan? United Press International, September 26, 2001. The White Man's Burden. McClure's Magazine 12. The Shining. Jack Nicholson's character Jack uses the phrase to refer to whiskey. External links: the text of the poem at Fordham University.